Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on how to write a speech, or how to write a killer speech, or how to write an effective speech, or how to write a speech that you can present confidently and without the need to refer to notes. Welcome. There's a few people still joining. Some of you've got microphones, some of you don't have microphones, and so I'll talk to you about the rules as we go, and then the way you can interact, but please do interact. So Peter Dew is my name, and I'm a public speaking trainer and coach. As I look down the list, most of you I know, but just in case, my passion is helping people overcome their fear of public speaking, helping them become more confident and more effective so that you can get your message across. You can achieve your career goals, your life aspirations. And one of the things I hate to see is anyone that's held back, anyone that doesn't do something that they should do as a result of their lack of confidence or their uncertainty around public speaking. You've got my email down there and my website. I always have webinars and other free resources like my newsletter available on my website. How the webinar goes, and I did get a comment that some of you don't have microphones and some of you do. So please ask questions as we go. I was talking earlier on while we're waiting to start. Think about the last speech you've written or a speech you've got coming and how you've crafted that speech and any questions you might have. If you could ask me anything about getting ready for your next speech and how you write it, what would that question be? Type in the dialogue box at any time. Don't wait for me to stop and ask you, are there any questions? The other way you can interact is if you put your hand up, I will open up your microphone. Some of you don't have a microphone, so type your question away at any time. Take notes and apply the logic, apply the tools, apply the lessons to your own unique questions, your own unique journey. I like to give in every webinar 2 or 3 skills that you can use tomorrow. So filter the information and work out what is it that you can do differently with your next speech, or what could have you done differently with your previous speech. Let's move on. The agenda. Where do you start when you're writing a speech? People ask me, I'm never sure what to begin. What is your core message? How do you get clarity around your core message? What do I mean by what is your core message? How do you open a speech? What's the correct way to close? The power of using 3 to 4 points in every presentation. Use your stories. I was talking earlier on about the next webinar on the 17th of November is about building your business stories. And a structure that'll put all of this together. It's a safe and simple structure that you'll be able to use, and some of you will be able to use it so you don't need to refer to notes. You'll have this mind map that will hold you and enable you to present without the need for notes. So I'm going to work through this agenda one by one. Once again, please take notes, but if there's something that you really want and you don't get it down, I can make a copy of these slides available to the webinar attendees. Just send me an email after and I can send you a PDF copy of these slides if that's of value to you. So where do you start? It's important to know where to start, otherwise the audience is going to get maybe the wrong message or not do anything or not change or not adopt your way of thinking. So this is how I work out where do you start. I want you to start at the beginning. So you've now finished your speech and everyone is walking out that door. They're leaving, they're gone. You've completed your presentation. What do you want to happen within that audience? What changes do you want to make? How do you want the audience to feel as they leave the door or during the presentation? What knowledge must they now know as they walk out the door? What 2-step, 3-step process? What do they need to know about the National Disability Insurance Scheme? What do they need to know about the new changes to Medicare? What do they need to know to unlock their own financial freedom? So as they leave your presentation, what do you want at the forefront of their mind? Now that you're clear on this, you can start to work out what your purpose is. So really, rather than starting at the beginning, how am I going to open my speech? What's some famous quote? What data do I need? Who am I going to thank? Which dignitaries are in the room? Start at the end. Ask yourself, as people leave, what impact do I want to have on them? And have clarity around that. Closely related to where do you start, and while you're thinking about where do you start, you need to have clarity of your purpose. So with purpose, they say use it or confuse it. And we've got this little man once again, as he's walking out the door, he's not sure which message he was meant to take. And sometimes in my presentation skills workshops, I get the audience, after someone has spoken, to write down what they think their one big core purpose was. And then I get them to read it out. And ideally, as a presenter, you'd want everyone to write down the same thing as what your core intention, your core purpose was. If someone says, look, Peter's purpose was to save water, and the next person says, no, Peter wants to identify additional water resources, and then the next person says, no, Peter's core message is we need to begin recycling our water. Clearly, I'm talking about water, but I've left the audience with mixed messages. And so they're all going to go out and spread different words, a different message. So the change management, the education process that I wanted hasn't gone as clear as I expected. So use your core message or confuse it. So how do you find your core purpose? And this gives you clarity of purpose. How do you find that? You can ignore that slide. No questions as yet. How do you find that? Ask yourself two questions, and this links to your clarity of purpose. So the first question I want you to ask yourself is, what do I want them to remember? So this is your take-home message. So unequivocally, what do I want them to remember? And secondly, why does it matter to them? If you're not clear on what one thing you want me to remember, now as I walk out the door, I'm not going to remember 3, 4, 5 or 6 things. I'm going to remember one big message. Nike's one big message, Nike, is just do it. Just do it. Nike, the brand, it's a brand name. It's that one takeaway message. And why does it matter to your audience? What's in it for me? Why do I care? Why do I give a damn? Because if I don't give a damn about what you're saying, about your new message, now understand you're passionate about it, and you may think that your message, your idea, your new strategy is the best thing since sliced bread. But if it has no relevance to the audience, then you are by default an entertainer, a stand-up comedian, and you're really not going to have impact. So why does it matter to your audience? How is it going to help them unlock their potential? How is it going to help them alleviate or remove some of their pain or some of their problems? How is your message going to help them achieve their goals, comply with their key performance indicators? So these are the two questions that I use to establish what my core message is. So think of it like this, Megan. If I bump into you down the street in 6 months' time after you have spoken, not after I've spoken, after you have spoken, and I come running up to you and I shake your hand and I introduce myself and I say to you, I loved your presentation and I absolutely loved, what one thing do you want me to say? that I loved about your presentation? What one thing do you want me to remember? So this is the takeaway message. Any questions on your clarity of purpose and your clarity of your core message and how your core message links to your purpose? Anyone have any comments? So I've got one comment. What if you really don't care about your core message and it's just part of your work? Now that's a tough one, and I do understand sometimes human resources or planning will give you a policy or a new instruction, and you're asked to go out and educate your staff or educate the troops, and really there's nothing in it for the staff. It's just a new HR policy. Then understand that's really a tough gig. So what you need to do is understand, why has HR introduced this new policy? There's got to be a benefit somewhere, and you sell the benefit. If it's a new health and safety policy, it's about reducing risk. It's about improving people's safety in the workplace. If it's a new IT system that people are worried about and it's going to be more technical, then there's got to be, what's the benefits? So all your records are going to be in one spot. So when you do your timesheets, when you do your annual leave form, when you do your sick leave form, rather than having multiple places to go to, multiple systems, you can access this all through one system. It's got to be a benefit for the audience. You as HR, it might make your job easier, but you're selling it to the staff. Why does it make their life easier? So yes, sometimes it's acknowledged you will get a difficult policy, a difficult principle to roll out, but try to find the what's in it for me from your audience's perspective. Great question. Any other questions before we move on? And someone's commented about marketing. Yes, what's in it for me is simply marketing. What it is, it's appealing to the need of the audience, and that's what marketing is. And yes, I guess in business and in an organization, you can impose new policies, you can impose new rules, and then you have to sell those rules or push those rules and get people to comply. But clever marketers change those policies, those rules around so that they don't have to sell them, they don't have to push it on the audience. Rather, the audience says, aha, this is going to make my life easier. I want some of that. I want some of that. What's in it for your audience? Now we can start with the beginning. So we can get to a traditional speech structure, beginning, middle, and end. So I want you to open really strong. It's called the rule of primacy. And an author and a marketing guru by the name of Milo Frank, so that's M-I-L-O, Milo Frank said, you have got 30 seconds to engage your audience, or you could spend the rest of your presentation trying to get them back, trying to create relevance. So the first 30 seconds is really important. Most of us will read newspapers or journal articles or magazines. I know very few people, other than my late father, who used to read every page from front in a newspaper, from the front all the way through to the back. Most of us look at articles and we read the headlines. It's called the attention grabber. It's called the byline. And when we see that headline, we decide whether we're going to read the rest of the article or not. It's a bit like that for a speaker. The first 30 seconds will let the audience know, or will influence the audience as to whether they're really interested and alert and on the edge of their seats, or whether they're going to shut down and just maybe not listen properly. So it's the first 30 seconds. So grab attention. So your first words are important. Use a quote. Use an attention grabber. Start strong. When I do my public speaking workshops, I start by saying, these are the first words. Sir Winston Churchill said, if you can stand on your feet and speak to a group of people, then you possess a very powerful skill. And of course, what he meant by that was your ability to engage, your ability to persuade. If you do have that ability, then you do have a really powerful skill. And then I deconstruct that and I talk a little bit more about that. Then I go into the housekeeping, and then I go into the agenda for the day. When I talk about in my workshop, a different workshop, how to overcome your fear of public speaking, one of my opening statements comes from Mark Twain. Mark Twain said there's two kinds of speakers in the world, those that are nervous and those of you who are just liars. And I'm sure none of you in this room are liars. So welcome to the workshop. Welcome to how to overcome your fear of public speaking. And the first lesson is everyone has nerves. Mark Twain also adds credibility. It's Mark Twain who says every speaker's nervous. It's not me, it's Mark Twain, that famous author. So start strong, grab attention. A statistic. Over the last 10 years, there's been 300 Victorians that have lost their life needlessly in the workplace as a result of preventable workplace accidents. Guys, on average, that's 30 deaths every 12 months in Victoria from preventable workplace accidents. Good morning, I'm from WorkSafe Victoria, and I want to talk to you about some new policies that we're going to put in place, blah, 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 blah. Grab attention. So the last box, not housekeeping. Good morning, everyone. Peter Dew's my name. It's a real pleasure to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I come from Perth. Can I get you to turn your mobile phones off? The toilets are down the back, females to the right, male to the left, and morning tea is at 10:30. Okay, good. Let's get started. My recommendation is that you do not open that way. Grab attention, step back into housekeeping. The first 30 seconds matters. It's called the rule of primacy. If you remember, and according to behavioral psychologists, you remember those first words. So apparently you're going to remember, good morning everyone, my name's Peter Dew, I'm from Perth, it's a real pleasure to be here. Can I get you to turn your mobile phones off? And toilets are down the back of the room. Wow, you're going to remember that. What value have I delivered to you in those words? Mark Twain said there's two kinds of speakers in the world, those that are nervous and those that are just liars. And I'm sure none of you in this room are liars. So welcome to how to control your nerves and overcome your fear of public speaking. Any questions on how to open your presentation? Someone's mentioned about do you acknowledge dignitaries and any other special things you need to mention. In a big conference and in a big event, and guys, I was lucky enough to go to the Rodriguez concert last night in Perth, and the MC did the introductions and welcomed people on stage, led the applause, and also did the acknowledgement of the traditional landowners. So if you've got a big gig, you'll have an MC or a chairman that can introduce you and do the housekeeping. And in fact, the MC mentioned where the toilets were, where the food vans are, where there was a smoking tent. Even though it was a smoke-free venue, there was a little corner that they'd cordoned off for smokers. So you don't have to do that. However, let's say you are presenting yourself and you have your own workshop, as I do. Certainly when I keynote speak, someone introduces me, and I can get straight into my content. But when I do my own presentations, I start strong. So Winston Churchill said, if you can stand on your feet and speak to a group of people, then you possess a very powerful skill. Today is about giving all of you some skills so that you can stand on your feet and you can have impact. Okay, before I go on, I need to acknowledge the traditional landowners, the Noongar people of West Australia, and I'd like to say that I respect past, present and current custodians of this land on which we meet. Can I get you to turn your mobile phones off? Morning tea is going to be at 10:30. Let's get back to Winston Churchill's quote. See how you can start strong and then step back and do any of those traditional things. And I'd like to acknowledge in the audience we have the member for Curtin, the Right Honourable such and such. I'd still start strong. Thank you for the question. A couple of people just joined. We've just got started. Open strong. First 30 seconds matters. If you want to put a name to it, the rule of primacy. Let's close our speech now. Let's move right to the end. How are you going to close? And this is called the rule of recency. Behavioural psychologists say those last 30 to 60 seconds, the last words that come out of your mouth, the audience remember. So it's important that you make those words relevant and important and what you want people to walk away with. So ending with a thank you. So thanks guys. You've been a really nice audience. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. Is of little value to you. Please have a safe journey home, and I hope to speak to you sometime in the future. Is of little value to you. So if you only do one thing today, what 2 or 3 tools from this webinar are you going to use the next time that you have to write a speech? Or how are you going to incorporate this new workplace occupational health and safety policy that I've just explained to you? How are you going to incorporate this new health and safety policy into your workplace tomorrow to make sure you do zero harm? So it's a bit of a call to action. It's ending strong. It's a memorable ending. Those words apparently stick. So don't end with platitudes. Of course, another thing that's not a good way, in my opinion, is to end with questions. My recommendation is that you don't end with questions. Why? Because if you end with questions and someone asks a difficult question, or let's say a contentious question, or even a left field, like out of scope question, and you as the presenter, you struggle to answer that question, or you're unable to answer it, that unintentionally, and that's the end of your presentation, that unintentionally becomes your takeaway message. That sticks in people's minds. Gee, Peter didn't answer that question that well. I don't think Peter knows as much as I thought he knows. And your credibility may even go down just that little bit. So have your question session. So are there any questions? Take the questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. Okay, guys, can I end questions there? Now, what I want you to do is, what 2 or 3 things are you going to take from this webinar that you can use tomorrow and next week when you write your next speech? Or how are you going to implement this new health and safety policy in your workplace tomorrow so we do zero harm? Leave yourself that 2 to 3 minutes so that you can go back and nail your take-home question. Really important. If I can give you an example, I used to work in the health department of West Australia, and I used to work in organ donation and transplantation. I was the manager of WA's organ donation agency, and I had to go out and do a lot of education and talking about organ donation and transplantation, and it was one of those topics that everybody wanted you to speak on it. So I had to speak at high schools, I had to speak at Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, St John's ambulance clubs, Scouts clubs. Everyone wanted to know about organ donation. So I did lots of speaking. And when I first started out, I made a mistake of ending with questions. And those of you who've been to my workshops, and those of you who saw my picture at the beginning of my webinar, notice that I don't have much hair left. In fact, I lost my hair when I was about 26, so I'm bald as a badger. So I just nailed my presentation. I had this high school class, 16, 17-year-olds, eating out of the palm of my hand. And I still had 10 minutes left, so I said, okay, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I was taking questions, and then one question came, and they said to me, excuse me, mister, this young man down the back, excuse me, mister, can you do a hair transplant? The whole class burst out laughing. And I said, look, yeah, good question. As a matter of fact, I think you can do a hair transplant. The school bell went. 400 kids went back to their class. They're all talking, they're all laughing. Did you see that guy that asked Peter about a hair transplant? He really didn't know how to answer it, and that became my take-home message. So as I continued doing this work over the next 7 years, the hair transplant question became quite logical, quite frequent. It was just a funny question. Those of you who are interested, hair transplant is the #1 transplant in Malaysia. So Malaysians do a lot of hair transplant. So I used to take that question and then answer it, and then I'd always leave myself with that 2 to 3 minutes time. Okay, I'm going to stop questions now. No more questions. I want you all to go home today and talk to your family, talk to your loved ones around your wishes about organ and tissue donation. So I had to go back and nail my ending. Don't let people walk out with that person who asked that contentious, that angry, that left field question that hijacks your whole core message. Leave yourself time to sum up. It's called the rule of recency. I'm going to pause for a moment. Any questions? So you've got clarity of what your purpose is. What do you want them to do when they leave? And you think about that. You've tightened up your core message by asking those 2 questions. What do I want them to remember in 6 months' time, and why does it matter to them? You've now got a short, sharp, 30-second sentence that opens strong, grabs attention, creates relevance. Is it a quote? Is it some statistics? Is it a short story that reveals the dilemma or the difficulty of which you've got the answer? You've now got your closing, your call to action, your conclusion, your memorable statement. Any questions? So let's move on and complete the traditional speech structure. This is your middle. This is your core message. This is the body. Opening, body, conclusion. Your beginning, your middle, and your end. So you've got your 30-second opening. That's called the rule of recency. The rule of primacy. You've got your 30-second closing. It's called the rule of recency. Now try and work out which 3 or 4 points illustrate, take us, amplify your core message. So simply put, if my core message was about how each of you could save 30 minutes a day through effective time management skills. Let's say I'm a time management trainer, how each of you could save 30 minutes a day in your working day through effective time management skills. That's my core message. What 3 points am I going to use to illustrate that? By the way, what's in it for you? Why do you care about saving 30 minutes a day? All of us are really busy in our lives. In fact, with mobile devices, we're spending more and more time. So if working on work, so if you all of a sudden had an extra 30 minutes where you could maybe read some journal articles, do some professional development, or catch up on some stuff that you've let go because you just don't have time, that would be really valuable to you. So I've got to come up with, and as a time management guru, which I am not, but let's say you were, what are the 3 key points? It can be 4. I don't mind if you've got 4. Please no more than 4. Let's say you've got 5 or 6 points. Merge a couple of those points into one and have sub-points, so you come back to that 3. It's called the rule of 3, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So my first point may be you need to have really good prioritization skills. And then I might talk to you about 10-15 minutes about prioritization, what I mean by prioritization, how to prioritize. What does good prioritization look like? What does bad prioritization look like? What's some examples of some bad prioritization? My second point might be around delegation. You may have to delegate, sometimes upwards. So when managers are pushing down, you may have to say no, or you may have to say, well, if you want me to do this, what other duties are you going to take off me, or what other duties are I going to delay and not do and not complete? You may have to delegate down to subordinates. Delegation is really important, and it's not just delegation or fobbing off, it's effective delegation. And the third point is, how are you going to use your computer tools? And I might be talking about Microsoft Office. I might be talking about Microsoft Project, your email system. Do you respond to emails in real time, or have you got an out-of-office autoresponder that says I check my emails twice a day? If you need me urgently, please call me on this phone number. And then you turn your email off and check it twice a day. How can you use your software? So if that's my 3 points that lead me to how you're going to save 30 minutes a day, then now I've got my core message. 3 to 4 points. What 3 to 4 points will bring people to your core message? Why the rule of 3? Why 3? The human mind can absorb 5 chunks of information at a time. So at a presentation, you're going to absorb 5 chunks of information plus or minus 2. So let's go to the lowest denominator. If you have 7 points in your presentation, a lot of people won't remember them. The majority will remember 5, and some people will only remember 3. It's called the rule of 3. 3s are rhythmical, they're memorable, and they just work. And if I give you some examples, in a court of law, you have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. William Shakespeare said, friends, Romans, and countrymen. Those of you who are a little bit older like me will know of the television program called The Three Stooges. In the Bible, there's 3 wise men. Our nursery rhymes, there were 3 blind mice. Goldilocks had some problems with 3 bears. Bar Bar Black Sheep generated 3 bags of wool, not 4, not 2. 2 is too few. So there's 2 reasons why we should do this. 4, 5 is too many. The 3 reasons why I want you to do this, the 3 points, the 3 steps, is really effective in the spoken word and in the written word. 7 is another magic number, but in the spoken word, 7 points is just too many. So that's the rule of 3. That's the rule of 3. Now, I want you to use your stories. Your stories are your examples, they're your case studies. Your stories are those anecdotes, those experiences that you've had. So if we go back to the core message and those 3 points around time management, first point was you need to learn to prioritize. So I said speak to that point about 15 minutes, sort of describe what prioritization means. Give some examples of good prioritization. Give a story of when you've been able to bring a project ahead of time and save time by effective prioritization skills. Don't be afraid of using negative examples. It's not a problem when you talk about when you failed to prioritize. It's when you fail to prioritize, the lessons are still there. What steps in an effective prioritization model did you neglect? And as long as the audience walks away with the lesson, whether it's a positive story or a negative story, they've still got the lesson. And what happens with the story is the story helps people remember. As I said, I'm going to speak on the 17th on how to build your business stories, and I'll talk about this more. But stories create an emotional response. Your data, your return on investment, your statistics, your trends create a neurological response. People tend to remember their gut response, their visceral response, more than their neurological response. If you just take shopping as an example, most people buy on impulse. Most people buy on a gut feeling. Most people buy on a whim. And yes, there is some Visa card stress a little bit later on, or we then have to declutter our house because we've got too much stuff. Very few people buy from an analytical point of view. We really need this. We've done the pros and cons. This is the advantages. This is the requirements. This is the return on investment if I do buy this particular thing. So, people walking out of your room after you've given them lots of data and statistics, you're unlikely to have impact, but they will remember the story you told them. So, what stories illustrate good prioritization that you can talk about? Your stories, your examples. What examples, what anecdotes do you have around delegation? Good delegation, bad delegation. What examples, what stories do you have about using your software? Using your software effectively to change time, to save time, to be more effective. Once again, I'm not a time management expert, but I was at a presentation once where someone was talking about accounting software and doing your tax returns and your business activity statement, your BAS statement. Now, I'm a small business, and my BAS statement that I have to submit every 3 months used to take me 3 to 4 days. So I'd have to spend a whole weekend, including a Friday, and sometimes spill over into a Monday, to complete my business activity statement and then submit it to the tax office. And often I was a little bit late, and the tax office gave me a reminder that if I'm late again, I will be fined. One day at this presentation, someone said, "Did you know there's a software system called Xero, X-E-R-O, that will streamline your BAS statements, will streamline your accounting activity, will streamline your tax returns. In fact, it can take the average BAS statement and reduce it by 90% of the time." He told me the story. What's in it for me? Wow, I can go from 3 days to 3 hours. I've been using Xero for 2 years now, and I can tell you my best statement takes me 3 hours. It's absolutely transformed my business. It's absolutely freed up my time. I never have to sweat. I never have to defer or put off my best statement, because it's happening as I go in the clouds through this wonderful software called Xero. I can't tell you what it does. I can't describe it to you. I can't give you the data. I'm not sure of the price. All I can tell you is, wow, it's completely freed me up, and for a non-accounting professional, it's just made my life an absolute breeze. Tell your stories. Are there any questions? So what you've got is you've got clarity of your purpose, you've got your core message, you've got your 30-second opening, you've got your 30-second conclusion. So that's the rule of primacy, first words, the rule of recency, those last words. You've got the 3 points, maybe 4, but the 3 points that really anchor your core message. The rule of 3 is memorable, it's rhythmical, and it just works. And now you're building, I'm just going to go back a slide, you're building a library of stories. So collect stories. Collect stories. Don't just have one story for effective prioritization. Have 4 or 5 stories for effective prioritization. Have 2 or 3 stories of negative prioritization. The time when you just weren't able to deliver because you mucked up with your prioritization. So collect this. I call it a library or a bank of stories. And then when you do your presentation, if it's a short presentation, you only need a couple of stories. If it's a longer presentation, you need more stories. So back to questions about what I've covered so far. And yes, someone's commented about they heard someone say too many stories or just a story with no point. So that's important, and I'm going to really nail the business story and how to create a story with the next webinar. So it's important your story makes a point. And the point relates to your core message. The story should be succinct, and the point should also have relevance to the audience. Now, I was doing some work with a group of people with disabilities, and they want to become advocates, they want to change the world. Things are not all that good for people with disabilities in terms of public transport, wheelchair accessible public transport. It's certainly not good. Employment opportunities are not good, so they want to change the world. And these people are inspiring, amazing individuals. And what they do is they tell their story and about their life and their journey and their struggle, which is brilliant, but they don't have a point. They don't come to a why do I care or what's in it for me. So in working with these people, I try to let them know that your story needs to contain the point, and the point or the message needs to relate and have some benefit to the audience. So don't just tell your story. Tell your story that makes a point that's going to help your audience. And in telling your story, I language, so I did this, I did that, and then I did that, and I was fantastic at this. It's all about you as a speaker. So even when you tell your stories, if you can use you language and we language, so you too can do this. So your child, when your child faces those barriers and people say, no, you can't do that, I want you and your child to not accept that no. I want you to keep trying. The same as I was able to work around this, I had to keep working, you too can work around this. You and your child can achieve whatever your dreams are. And what I want to do is I want all of us here, we're able to make a difference by all of us lobbying politicians, lobbying disability services, lobbying funders. So it's more about the audience and less about you. So yes, that's a good point. Don't just tell your story unless you're a stand-up comedian and you're an entertainer. Thank you. So a safe and simple structure, let's put it all together. And we may even end a few minutes early today. This is my mind map, or one of my mind maps. Rule of primacy, 30 seconds. Rule of recency, your conclusion, your take-home message. The first question, what do I want them to remember? Second question, why does it matter to them? That gives you clarity of your core message. Use the clarity of your core message or you'll lose them. You'll lose your core message. What 1, 2, 3 points, maybe 4, but I think 3 is good. What 3 points will bring people to your core message? What 3 steps do people need to do to achieve effective time management, effective financial security? What 3 steps do people need to do to get fit, to lose weight? And then give your stories, your examples, weave your stories and examples from your bank of stories, weave them around your presentation. So let's say if you had a bank of 4, maybe 5 stories for each point. So collect them. And then let's say you've now got a 30-minute presentation. Your beginning, your opening remains the same, that 30-second attention grabber, that rule of primacy. Your conclusion remains the same. The rule of recency, that call to action, that memorable closing statement. Your purpose is the same, what you want people to remember and why it's relevant to them. 3 points is still plenty, but you're going to get rid of some of your stories. So you're only going to need to do 1 or 2 examples, 1 or 2 stories per point. And there's your 30-minute presentation. Dynamic, ready to go. Let's say you've now been asked to speak for an hour and a half on your topic. Same 30 seconds opening, same 30-second conclusion, same core message, same 3 points. But now you're going to have 5 or 6 stories, 5 or 6 pieces of evidence, 5 or 6 case studies that illustrate, that demonstrate each point. Some of the stories may be negative, bad prioritization. It's not that you're a bad person or you've done anything wrong. It's just that you didn't understand prioritization at that time and the importance of maybe getting buy-in before you delegate, and you delegated down without properly briefing and getting buy-in from your subordinate. So this is almost like a concertina. You stretch it for a 2-hour presentation. You condense it for a 30-minute, for a 15-minute presentation. Same impact, same message, same presentation. The only thing changes is the level of evidence, stories, case studies, anecdotes, examples per point. Simple structure, concertina structure. Or let's go to a mind map. Those of you who like mind mapping, put your core message in the middle. What is the message that you want everyone to walk away with? Why is it important? Have your strong opening, have your strong closure. And I've put 4 points here just to show you 4 points of really acceptable. What's point 1? What's point 2? What's point 3? What's point 4? You can have sub-points. Tell a story, make a point. The story needs to have a point, have multiple stories. So when I talk about fear of public speaking, I talk about Ringo Starr, who still experiences stage fright. The drummer of the Beatles still experiences stage fright. And they've labelled him in the UK, Pukey in the Sky with Diamonds. Ringo Starr vomits. I talk about Sally Pearson, who was asked if she was nervous before the Olympic 110-metre women's hurdles final, which she won. Sally Pearson's our gold medal hurdler. Are you nervous, Sally? Of course I'm nervous. If I wasn't nervous, I would not be ready to race. Sally Pearson, Ringo Starr, are nervous before they perform, whether it's a race, a sport, a music gig, a presentation. Nerves are a normal part. I've got other stories. So I've got this bank of stories, and I will, depending on how long I'm speaking on that topic, I will bring in more stories. There's your mind map. You can also use an A4 page and do bullet points. So you're opening point 1 and then sub-points, which would be your stories, and all I need is a word. So I just put Ringo Starr, and I can talk to you about Ringo Starr and his stage fright and Pukey in the Sky with Diamonds and the way the British tabloids have labelled him. I can talk for about 3 minutes. I could have another point and I'll just put Sally Pearson. That's all I need, one word in this mind map. I can tell you about Sally Pearson. And if she also says if I wasn't nervous, I wasn't ready to race. And that's about your peak performance mode. You're having the healthy level of nerves, the healthy level of anxiety. So the concertina mind map, the traditional mind map, or one A4 page with your bullet points, your opening 30 seconds, your closing 30 seconds, is how you write a speech, how you write a killer speech. Any questions? Any comments? Is anyone open with a, it's really nice to be here. My name's Peter. Turn your mobile phones off. Toilets at such and such. Does anyone close by saying, thanks guys, you've been a wonderful crowd. Please have a safe journey home. I'd like to thank the organisers. I hope to see you all again. Okay, good. I'm assuming that you will now understand that there is an opportunity to have greater impact by starting strong and finishing strong. Even if you just do those two things, your presentation will be more effective. And ending with a call to action. What do you want people to do? Great comment, Megan. One of the things I see with speakers do, is they just stop speaking. So they're really engaging and they're wonderful, and then they stop speaking. And I walk out of the room and I think, wow, that was a lovely presentation. I was entertained. They've got a wonderful voice. They speak beautifully. And I do nothing because they did not ask me to do something. If you want your audience to do something, then end with that call to action. I've given enough promo about the next webinar, but this is about the stories, and this is the stories that slot into your speech that you've just written. So if you're available, please register. A whole hour on just building your business stories when you're public speaking. I've got another comment. Thanks, Peter. Here's a quote from my desk diary. Some people talk in their sleep. Lecturers talk with their audiences asleep. Yeah. Some people talk in their sleep. Lecturers talk while their audience is asleep. And another comment, always deliver a speech, not a lecture. Yep. Always deliver a speech and not a lecture. Another webinar that I do every now and then is about how to use PowerPoint effectively. And I love this sort of concept. And it comes back to stories again. And I'm not necessarily religious, and I'm not sort of promoting religion in any way, but Moses did the 10 Commandments, and not many people can read the 10 Commandments. Not many people can remember all 10 of the 10 Commandments. Jesus told stories. So Moses did death by PowerPoint, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Jesus told stories. Everyone can remember a story from Jesus from the Bible. The fish, feeding the masses, the Sermon on the Mount. We all can remember a story. Who can remember all of the 10 bullet points? Thank you for those comments. I've got some upcoming workshops. Please just go to my website, share these with any colleagues. 2 workshops coming up in Melbourne. We've got vacancies in both. In fact, 3 workshops. Difficult conversations, winning presentation skills, which is just taking some of this webinar but to the next level. How to be assertive. So this is speaking up for yourself. The difficult conversations, the assertive communication skills are run by my wife, and she's works in the interpersonal communication skills space. 2 workshops in Bunbury, difficult conversations and how to overcome your fear. So that's my introductory public speaking workshop. So this is way down to just dealing with the nerves. And the Mark Twain's, there's 2 kinds of speakers, those that are nervous and those that are just liars. More workshops in Perth, and I am going to run a webinar series over December and January. And these webinars are going to run for 5 weeks. 1-hour webinars that I'm going to do live and record. I'm going to provide an ebook, a question and answer sheet for each webinar, and provide 20-minute Skype coaching sessions for each of the webinars, for each individual who registers. If you're interested in those webinars, one of them will be how to overcome your fear of public speaking. 5 weeks, 5 series. So with a 3-week stop over Christmas and then resuming in January. Send me an email, winning presentation skills and thinking and speaking off the cuff. So I'm going to leave that there. A lot of this content comes from How to Write a Killer Speech. You can get this ebook from my website. So what I want to know, what are you going to do for your next speech as a result of what you've learnt today? How can you be more impactful, more effective? Are you going to use the model not to read from your notes? I'll leave that with you. Any last questions, feel free to send me an email, and do use some of these tools to be more effective the next time you speak. And that's all for now.